My name is Eliana Reynolds, and I've spent 15 years being the shadow to my so-called best friend's spotlight. 15 years of picking up pieces, making excuses, and swallowing my pride. But today something inside me finally shattered. When I found out they deliberately hid my invitation to her baby shower. After everything I've sacrificed, I knew it was time. They thought they could erase me from their perfect little narrative? Well, I've been holding on to something they don't know about. That beautiful Tudor home they're so proud of? The one they've been showing off to everyone for the past 3 months? I'm the one who bought it. And tomorrow, when I walk into that baby shower with the receipt for their entire house, they're going to learn what happens when you betray the person who's been silently holding you up all these years. Before we continue, if you enjoy stories of friendship, betrayal, and epic revenge, make sure to click that subscribe button. This is the best way for you to support our work. Thank you very much, and let's continue. It all started back in college when Rebecca and I became roommates by random assignment. I was the quiet scholarship student from a small town in Ohio, struggling to balance 2 jobs while maintaining my grades. Rebecca Harrington was from old money, confident and magnetic in a way I'd never be. She swept into our dorm room with 3 suitcases of designer clothes and immediately claimed the better side of the room. I didn't mind. I was just grateful to be there. I still remember that first night when she convinced me to skip my shift at the campus cafe to attend a party with her. "You can make money anytime," she'd said. "But connections? Those are priceless." Looking back, that moment perfectly encapsulated our dynamic for the next 15 years. Rebecca had a gift for making people feel special when she focused her attention on them. When she declared us best friends after that first party, it felt like I'd won some sort of cosmic lottery. Me, Eliana Reynolds, chosen by someone like Rebecca. Throughout college, I became her constant companion, emotional support, an occasional academic crutch. I edited her papers, covered for her absences with professors, and celebrated her successes as if they were my own. After graduation, when Rebecca landed a prestigious marketing position through her father's connections, I was genuinely happy for her. I had secured a job at a small investment firm, nothing flashy but stable with good growth potential. We rented an apartment together in the city, where our roles continued as they had in college. Rebecca brought the glamour and social connections. I handled the bills, cleaned up after parties, and made sure rent was paid on time. "You're the responsible one," she'd say whenever I questioned the imbalance. "I'd be absolutely lost without you." And somehow, that admission of dependency was enough to keep me in orbit around her. Then came Daniel. He walked into one of Rebecca's lavish parties 5 years ago. Handsome, ambitious, and instantly captivated by her. I noticed him first, actually. We had a conversation about architecture near the window, away from the crowd. He had an earnestness about him that was rare in Rebecca's social circle. For 20 minutes we discussed our shared love of historic homes, preservation versus modernization, and how spaces shape the way we live. It was the most engaging conversation I'd had in months. But then Rebecca spotted us. She floated over, champagne in hand, and within minutes, Daniel was ensnared in her gravitational pull. I stepped back, as I always did, and watched another possibility slip away. Their relationship progress with the intensity and drama typical of Rebecca's life. They'd break up dramatically, and I'd console her through tearful nights, only for them to reconcile with equal passion days later. Daniel would send apologetic glances my way during these reconciliations, as if acknowledging the emotional labor I was performing, but he never intervened to change the pattern. When they got engaged 2 years ago, Rebecca immediately appointed me as her maid of honor. "Who else would I possibly choose?" she'd said, as if the hundreds of hours I was about to spend planning her perfect day were a gift she was bestowing upon me rather than requesting. The wedding was, of course, spectacular. I delivered a heartfelt speech that carefully omitted any reference to their volatile relationship history. I danced with Rebecca's father when Daniel was pulled away by relatives. I coordinated with vendors when things went wrong so the bride would never know. At the end of the night, Rebecca hugged me tightly and whispered, "I couldn't have done any of this without you, Elle." And despite everything, those words still warmed something inside me. After the wedding, I expected our friendship would naturally evolve. Rebecca and Daniel bought a starter apartment, and I found my own place nearby. I was dating someone, James, who worked in finance with me. He was kind and consistent, qualities I had come to value more than the charisma that had once drawn me to Rebecca. For a brief moment, it seemed like we might establish a healthier dynamic as couples who socialize together rather than as Rebecca and her sidekick. That illusion shattered when Rebecca called me at 2 a.m., 6 months after her wedding. She and Daniel had fought catastrophically, and she needed a place to stay. I left James sleeping in my bed and spent the rest of the night on my couch listening to Rebecca dissect every word of their argument. When James emerged in the morning, confused and slightly hurt by the situation, Rebecca barely acknowledged him. "Your boyfriend seems nice," she said dismissively after he left for work. "A bit boring maybe, but stable. That's probably good for you." The comment stung, but I pushed the feeling aside. Rebecca was in crisis, and that's when she needed me most. The pattern continued for months. Rebecca and Daniel's relationship was a pendulum of passion and conflict, with me serving as mediator, counselor, and occasional referee. James grew increasingly frustrated with the constant interruptions and the way Rebecca seemed to disregard boundaries. "She treats you like an employee, not a friend," he said one night after Rebecca had called 3 times during our dinner date. "You deserve better than that, Eliana." Deep down, I knew he was right, but 15 years of friendship created a powerful inertia. "You don't understand," I told him. "Rebecca and I have history. She's been there for me too." But when I tried to recall specific examples of Rebecca's sacrifices for me, they were surprisingly difficult to pinpoint. The real turning point came about a year ago. Rebecca called me on a Tuesday afternoon, her voice bubbling with excitement. "I'm pregnant. Can you believe it? I'm going to be a mom." Despite the complications of her marriage and my growing reservations about our friendship, I was genuinely happy for her. "That's amazing, Becca. How are you feeling? How did Daniel react?" "He's over the moon," she gushed. "And I feel fantastic. Actually, that's part of why I'm calling. Daniel and I have been thinking, this apartment is way too small for a growing family. We need to find a house like immediately. You're so good with the practical stuff. Will you help us look?" And just like that, I was pulled back into Rebecca's orbit. My relationship with James had been strained to the breaking point by my divided loyalties, and a week after Rebecca's announcement, he finally gave me an ultimatum. "I can't compete with her," he said quietly as we sat on my couch. "I don't think you're ready to prioritize our relationship the way I need you to." I wanted to protest, to promise that I could change, but the truth was I wasn't sure I could. When Rebecca needed me, some deep-rooted part of me still responded with that eager-to-please scholarship girl who had been so grateful for her friendship. James deserved better than half of my attention and fragments of my heart. After he left, I threw myself into house hunting with Rebecca and Daniel. It was easier than examining the wreckage of my personal life or questioning why a 15-year friendship had cost me a chance at love. For weeks, we toured properties throughout the city and surrounding suburbs. Rebecca rejected house after house for increasingly trivial reasons. The kitchen counters were the wrong color. The backyard didn't face the right direction. The primary bedroom closet wasn't large enough. Daniel grew increasingly frustrated, but I remained patient, scheduling more viewings, researching neighborhoods, and calculating mortgage options. Then, on a rainy Sunday in April, we found it. A stunning Tudor revival on a quiet street in the most desirable school district in the area. The moment we stepped inside, I knew this was the one. The house had character and history, but had been tastefully updated with modern amenities. The backyard was spacious with mature trees providing privacy. There were 4 bedrooms, a home office, and a finished basement that could become a playroom. I glanced at Rebecca, expecting to see the dismissive look I'd grown accustomed to, but her eyes were wide with wonder. "It's perfect," she whispered, reaching for Daniel's hand. "This is our home. I can feel it." For once, we all agreed on something. The only problem was the price tag, significantly above what Rebecca and Daniel have budgeted. As we stood in the elegant foyer, the real estate agent discreetly mentioned that there was already another offer pending. "We need to act fast," she said. "If you're serious about this property, I'd recommend coming in above asking." Rebecca's face fell. I knew that look. The one she got when something she wanted seemed to be slipping through her fingers. Despite everything, seeing her disappointment still affected me. That night, alone in my apartment, I made a decision that would change everything. My grandmother had left me a substantial inheritance when she passed away 2 years earlier. I had been cautiously investing it, unsure what I was saving for. Now, looking at my empty apartment and reflecting on my recently ended relationship, I thought, why not use it to help the one constant person in my life? The next morning, I contacted my financial advisor and made arrangements to liquidate part of my investment portfolio. I called the real estate agent directly and made an all-cash offer on the Tudor house, well above asking price. The seller accepted immediately. My plan was simple. I would purchase the house in my name, then work out a rent-to-own agreement with Rebecca and Daniel that would accommodate their budget. Eventually, they could buy it from me when their finances allowed. It would be my gift to them, to their growing family. When I called Rebecca to share the news, I was bubbling with excitement. "The Tudor house is yours," I told her. "Well, technically it's mine for now, but..." "What do you mean it's yours?" she interrupted, her voice suddenly sharp. I explained my plan in detail, emphasizing that they could move in immediately and that I had structured everything to be maximally beneficial for them. There was a long silence on the line. "So you just bought our dream house?" Rebecca finally said, "Without consulting us? Without asking if we'd be comfortable with that arrangement?" Her reaction caught me completely off guard. "I thought you'd be happy," I said, my voice small. "You loved the house, and this way you can have it even though it's above your budget." "Do you have any idea how humiliating this is?"
she snapped.
"To have my friends swoop in and buy a house that my husband and I couldn't afford? What is Daniel going to think? That I had to run to my rich friend to solve our problems?" "Rich friend? Rebecca, you know I'm not." "Whatever, Ileana. I have to go. I need to talk to Daniel about this situation you've created." She hung up, leaving me stunned and confused. In all our years of friendship, I had never considered that my help might be seen as an insult rather than a gift. For days, I heard nothing from Rebecca. My texts went unanswered, my calls to voicemail. Finally, almost a week later, Daniel called me. "Hey, Ileana," he said, his voice cautious. "Look, Rebecca's still processing everything, but we've talked it over, and we'd like to accept your offer. The house really is perfect for us, especially with the baby coming." Relief washed over me. "That's great, Daniel. And so glad. I never meant to upset Rebecca. I just wanted to help." There was an awkward pause. "I know that," he said finally. "And I'm grateful. Rebecca will come around. She's just, you know how she is about being in control of things." I did know. It was one of the fundamental truths of our friendship. Rebecca led, I followed. My purchasing the house had disrupted that dynamic, and she was struggling to adjust. "Why don't we meet with a lawyer next week to draw up the agreement?" Daniel suggested. "And maybe give Rebecca a little space until then. Her pregnancy hormones are making everything more intense right now." I agreed, though the thought of being shut out of Rebecca's life, even temporarily, created a hollow feeling in my chest. What was my purpose if not to be her supporter, her helper, her friend? The meeting with the lawyer was brief and businesslike. Rebecca was polite but distant, touching her growing baby bump protectively whenever I spoke, as if shielding her child from me. We signed the papers, and I handed over the keys. There were no hugs, no excited planning of housewarming parties or nursery designs. Just a curt thank you from Rebecca, and a sympathetic glance from Daniel. "I'll text you,"
Rebecca said as they left.
We both knew she wouldn't. Over the next 2 months, our contact was minimal. I saw glimpses of their life through social media. Rebecca posting photos of the house, never mentioning how they acquired it, showing off the nursery progress, hosting dinner parties in the dining room I had fallen in love with during our viewing. I wasn't invited to any of these gatherings. When I did reach out, Rebecca's responses were brief and uninformative. "Just busy with house stuff. Doctor says everything's progressing normally. Yes, we're settled and fine." I told myself to be patient. The pregnancy, the move, these were major life changes. Once the baby arrived, surely things would normalize between us. Rebecca would need me again, especially as a new mother navigating the challenges of parenthood. Then came the baby shower. I hadn't heard about it directly from Rebecca, but assumed I would be involved in planning it, given our history. When 3 months passed and she hadn't mentioned it, I finally texted her directly. Hey, I was thinking about your baby shower. Do you have a deed in mind yet? Her response came hours later. Oh, Melissa and Jennifer are already handling it. It's all arranged for this Saturday. Melissa and Jennifer were acquaintances from Rebecca's work, women she occasionally mentioned, but whom I'd only met a handful of times. That they were organizing her shower, instead of me, felt like a deliberate exclusion. This Saturday? I replied, trying to keep my tone light, cutting it a bit close with the invitation. Aren't you?
What time should I arrive, and do you have a registry somewhere?
Another long pause before her response. Sorry, I thought Daniel mentioned it to you. It's just a small gathering, really intimate. With the house still needing work and everything, we decided to keep it to just family and a few close colleagues. The message was clear. I was neither family nor a close enough friend to make the cut. Despite having purchased the very house where the shower would be held, I spent that night cycling through emotions: hurt, anger, confusion, and finally a cold clarity. For 15 years, I had oriented my life around Rebecca's needs and whims. I had sacrificed relationships, career opportunities, and now a significant portion of my inheritance, all while telling myself that our friendship was worth these compromises. But was it really friendship if it only existed on her terms? If I was valuable to her only when I was serving a purpose? The morning of the baby shower, I woke up with the determination I hadn't felt in years. I dressed carefully in a blue silk dress I had been saving for a special occasion, applied my makeup with precision, and drove to the bank. There, I requested a copy of the closing documents for the Tudor house, including the receipt showing my payment in full. As I pulled up to the house, their house, my house, I saw cars lining the street. Through the large front windows, I could make out colorful decorations, and a gathering of at least 20 people. So much for a small, intimate gathering. I sat in my car for several minutes, wondering if I was making a mistake. Was I about to become the villain in Rebecca's story, the bitter friend who couldn't handle being excluded? But then I remembered all the times I had swallowed my feelings to keep peace between us, all the one-sided compromises, all the moments when my needs have been deemed less important than hers. With the envelope containing the house documents clutched in my hand, I walked up the path to the front door. I could hear laughter inside, Rebecca's distinctive voice rising above the others. I rang the doorbell.
Daniel answered,
his expression shifting from welcoming to shocked when he saw me. Ileana, I didn't expect. I know, I said quietly. I wasn't invited. May I come in? He hesitated, glancing back over his shoulder toward the living room where the party was underway. Now might not be the best time, he began, but I was already stepping past him into the foyer. The house looked beautiful, even more so than when we had first viewed it. Rebecca had decorated it exquisitely, with furniture that complemented the architectural details and personal touches that made it feel like a home that I had made possible, but wasn't welcome to visit. As I entered the living room, conversations halted. Rebecca was seated in an armchair, surrounded by gifts, her baby bump now prominent under a floral maternity dress. Her face froze when she saw me. Eliana, she said, her voice tight. What a surprise. Is it? I asked, subtly calm despite the tension radiating through the room. I thought there must have been some mistake with my invitation. After all, who wouldn't invite the person who bought them their house to celebrate the new life that will be brought into that house? A confused murmur spread through the guests. Rebecca's mother, whom I recognized from the wedding, looked between her daughter and me with raised eyebrows. This really isn't the time or place for whatever this is,
Rebecca said,
one hand protectively on her stomach. Maybe we should talk privately later. No, I said firmly. I think here and now is perfect. Because I've recently realized something important, the difference between generosity and self-erasure. I opened the envelope and removed the closing documents. For those who don't know, I purchased this house in cash 4 months ago. Rebecca and Daniel are living here under a rent-to-own agreement that I structured to be incredibly favorable to them. I did this because for 15 years, I believed that friendship meant supporting each other unconditionally, even when it costs you something. Rebecca's face had gone pale. Daniel moved to stand beside her chair, his expression a mix of embarrassment and concern. Eliana, please, he said quietly. Not like this.
But I continued, my voice steady.
I never expected gratitude. I never wanted Rebecca to feel indebted to me. All I wanted was to be included in her life the way I've always included her in mine. To be treated with basic respect and consideration. I placed the documents on the coffee table.
So here's my baby shower gift.
The full receipt for this house, along with amended ownership documents that I had drawn up yesterday. The house is yours free and clear. No more monthly payments, no more rent-to-own arrangement. A collective gasp went through the room. Rebecca stared at the papers, then at me, her expression unreadable. "Why would you do this?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Because I'm setting us both free," I replied. "You from any financial obligation to me, and myself from the expectation that someday, if I'm useful enough or generous enough or patient enough, you'll finally value me as much as I valued you." I looked around the room at the faces of people who had been deemed more important to Rebecca's life celebration than I was. "Enjoy the party," I said. "And congratulations on the baby. I genuinely hope your family will be happy in this home." As I turned to leave, Rebecca's mother stood up.
"Young lady," she called after me.
"I don't know exactly what's happened between you two, but what you've just done is extraordinary. Would you consider staying?" I paused, looking back at Rebecca. For a moment I saw a flicker of the girl I had met 15 years ago. Vulnerable, uncertain, human beneath the perfect facade. But there was no recognition in her eyes of the magnitude of what had transpired between us, no dawning awareness of the patterns we had enacted year after year.
"Thank you," I said to her mother.
"But I have somewhere else I need to be." That somewhere else was nowhere in particular, just away from the house and the history it represented.
I drove aimlessly for a while,
eventually finding myself at a small park overlooking the city. As I sat on a bench watching families play and couples stroll hand in hand, I felt a curious lightness. For the first time in 15 years, I was free from the orbit of Rebecca's needs and dramas. The realization was both terrifying and exhilarating. Who was Eliana Reynolds without Rebecca Harrington to define her role? I was about to find out. 2 weeks later, I received a text from Daniel. "Rebecca had the baby yesterday. A healthy girl, 7 pounds 2 ounces. They're both doing well." I responded with congratulations and left it at that. No offer to bring meals or help with laundry. No questions about the birth or suggestions for managing newborn sleep schedules. Just acknowledgement and good wishes. A month passed then too. I focused on rebuilding the parts of my life that had been neglected during my years as Rebecca's support system. I reconnected with college friends who had drifted away. Unable to compete with the demands of my primary friendship, I pursued a promotion at work that would require more travel and responsibility. Opportunities one had previously declined to remain available for Rebecca.
Most significantly, I reached out to James, not with expectations of reconciliation,
but with an apology and an explanation. We met for coffee, the conversation awkward at first but eventually flowing into something genuine. "You seem different,"
he observed as we were preparing to leave.
"More
present." "I am," I acknowledged.
"I'm learning to be the main character in my own story." He smiled at that. "It suits you." We didn't make plans to meet again, but the interaction left me hopeful that genuine connections, balanced, reciprocal relationships, were possible for me. It was nearly 3 months after the baby shower when Rebecca called. Seeing her name on my phone screen sent a jolt of adrenaline through me, but it was nothing compared to the overwhelming response I would have had before. "To know,"
I answered, neither warm nor cold.
"Eliana," she said, her voice hesitant. "Bye. We haven't talked in a while." "No, we haven't."
A long pause followed. I could hear the baby making soft noises in the background.
"I've been thinking about what happened,"
Rebecca finally continued. "About everything, really.
"Having Sophia has changed my perspective on a lot of things." "I'm glad to hear that," I said, genuine but guarded.
"The thing is," she went on,
"I don't want Sophia to grow up without knowing her Aunt Eliana, and I miss you."
More than I expected to.
It was the closest thing to an apology I was likely to get from Rebecca. In the past, it would have been enough. A crumb of acknowledgement that I mattered to her, that my absence had been noticed. "I miss aspects of our friendship too,"
I admitted.
"But Rebecca, I don't think I can go back to how things were before." "I know," she said quickly. "I don't expect that."
Things would be different now. I'm different now.
I considered her words, trying to separate hope from reality. What are you suggesting exactly?
Come meet Sophia, she said. Just come see her. No pressure, no expectations. We can figure out the rest as we go. I thought about it for several long moments. The old Eliana would have already been reaching for her car keys, eager to be needed, to be included once again. But I wasn't that person anymore. I'd like to meet her, I said finally. But not today. I have plans this afternoon. How about next weekend? There was a brief pause, likely surprise at my unavailability. Next Saturday would work,
Rebecca said.
around 2. I'll be there at 2, I confirmed. As promised, the following Saturday I arrived at the Tudor house precisely at 2 o'clock. This time, when Daniel opened the door, his welcome seemed genuine. The house felt different too. Less like a showpiece and more like a home, with evidence of new parenthood scattered throughout. A portable bassinet in the living room, burp cloths draped over furniture, a half-empty bottle of water abandoned on a side table.
Rebecca emerged from the nursery,
cradling a tiny bundle in a yellow blanket. She looked tired but content in a way I had never seen before, her face free of makeup, her hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. Eliana, she said softly, thank you for coming. She approached, carefully transferring the baby into my arms. This is Sophia Eliana Harrington. I looked down at the infant, then back at Rebecca in surprise. You named her after me? She nodded, tears welling in her eyes. It felt right. Whatever happens between us, you've been a part of my life for so long. You made it possible for us to have this home for her. I wanted her to carry that connection with her. I studied the sleeping baby's face, the delicate sweep of her eyelashes, the perfect bow of her lips. She's beautiful,
I whispered.
Would you like some tea? Daniel offered, breaking the emotional moment. I just put the kettle on. We moved to the kitchen, Sophia still nestled in my arms. As Daniel prepared the tea and Rebecca gathered cookies onto a plate, I noticed subtle changes in their dynamic. He moved around her with attentive consideration. She accepted his help without directing or criticizing. Parenthood seemed to have shifted something fundamental between them. How are you both adjusting? I asked as we settled at the kitchen table. It's been intense, Rebecca admitted. I had no idea how completely a tiny human could take over your life. Some days I don't remember if I've brushed my teeth or eaten lunch. Rebecca's amazing with her, Daniel said, pride evident in his voice. Even when she's exhausted, she has this instinct for what Sophia needs. Rebecca smiled gratefully at him before turning back to me. But what about you? Daniel mentioned you got a promotion. The question startled me. In 15 years of friendship, Rebecca had rarely shown sustained interest in the details of my career. I did, I confirmed. I'm heading up a new division focused on sustainable investments. It involves quarterly trips to our West Coast office. That's fantastic, she said, and appeared to genuinely mean it. You always had better financial instincts than anyone I know. The conversation continued, surprisingly easy and balanced. Rebecca asked questions about my life and actually listened to the answers. She shared vulnerable truths about her struggles with breastfeeding and sleep deprivation, without turning them into dramatic narratives where she was the central character. As the afternoon progressed, I felt something unexpected. Not the rekindling of our old friendship, but perhaps the tentative beginning of something new, something healthier. When it was time for me to leave, Rebecca walked me to the door while Daniel stayed with the now fussing Sophia. I owe you an apology, Rebecca said abruptly. Actually, I owe you about 1,000 apologies for things stretching back to our freshman year of college, but especially for how I reacted when you bought this house. And for the baby shower. That was inexcusable. I studied her face, searching for the manipulation that had often lurked beneath her moments of apparent sincerity in the past. But all I saw was regret and a new humility that parenthood seemed to have instilled in her. What were you thinking? I asked, a question I had wanted to voice for months. When you excluded me from the shower, knowing what I had done for you? She sighed heavily. I was embarrassed, threatened. When you bought the house, it made me feel inadequate, like I couldn't provide for my own family. And then there was all this tension between us, and it was easier to just create distance than to admit I was wrong.
That must have been difficult for you,
I said, not unkindly but not absolving her either. It was stupid and ungrateful, she corrected herself. Having Sophia has made me realize how childish I've been in so many ways, and how much I took you for granted all these years. I nodded, accepting her words without immediately offering forgiveness.
I played my part too, I acknowledged.
I allowed the imbalance between us for a very long time. Do you think, she asked hesitantly, that we could try again? Not like before, but something new? I'd really like Sophia to grow up knowing you. I considered her question carefully. The easy answer would be yes, to fall back into orbit around Rebecca and her new family, to let the past fade away unaddressed. The equally easy answer would be no, to protect myself from potential future disappointments, to maintain the independence I had fought so hard to establish. But perhaps there was a middle path. I'd like to be part of Sophia's life,
I said finally.
and I'm open to rebuilding our friendship, Rebecca.
But it would have to be different. More equal.
With boundaries that we both respect. I'd like that too, she said, relief evident in her voice. I don't expect things to change overnight, but baby steps? I smiled at the unintentional pun. Baby steps it is. As I drove away from the Tudor house that afternoon, I realized that the story didn't have a neat ending. There was no dramatic conclusion, no definitive triumph or failure. Just complex people trying to grow and evolve, making mistakes and hopefully learning from them. The house that had become a symbol of our dysfunctional dynamic now held the possibility of something healthier. A place where a new generation might thrive, where old patterns could be broken, where friendship could be redefined on better terms. I didn't know if Rebecca and I would succeed in creating this new version of our relationship. Trust once broken is never easily restored. But for the first time in our 15-year history, we were at least attempting to meet as equals, two flawed, fully realized people rather than protagonist and supporting character. And regardless of what happened with Rebecca, I had found something more valuable through this painful process. My own voice, my own boundaries, my own worth independent of how useful I could be to others. The Tudor house would always hold a piece of my heart and my history. But my future? That belonged entirely to me.